Welcome to the Stories Create Moments podcast, the podcast where we talk about how stories and books can help children connect with themselves, their peers, their communities, and the world. Today, our guest is Carol Paur. Carol has an MA in communication. She's written and produced children's plays. She's an author, speaker, writing mentor, and mental health advocate, and she has written 3 books for children. Welcome to the podcast, Carol. I'm so happy you're here. Can you tell us a little bit more about yourself?
Great. Yeah, thank you. I'm excited to be here, Amber. I'm married and I have 4 kids and 2 very naughty dogs. I like to say I'm a gardener, but I really have more weeds than flowers. But the butterflies are there and I'm waiting for some hummingbirds to show up. Yeah, and I'm pretty busy. I run a Rotary Club. I sing in 2 choirs, so I keep myself out of trouble most of the time.
I love that you attract butterflies to your garden and hummingbirds.
I did have a man walk by and he goes, "Oh, what a beautiful garden, but you sure have a lot of weeds." I'm like, "Thank you."
That would be my garden. My husband is good at gardens, but me not so much. So, anyway, the butterflies make up for the weeds, I'm sure. Well, I appreciate you being here to talk
Right?
to me about your books and specifically Raleigh, Peters, and the Lumberjack Ghost because this episode will air in October and this is a little bit of a ghost mystery, which was really fun to read. But as we talk about your writing experience and careers, what was a foundational experience for you that set your love for reading and for stories and for books?
Sure. So I was born with a cleft palate, and truthfully, I did not want to be a writer. I wanted to be a doctor. Because I was surrounded by medical personnel, a lot, right? I had to go see doctors and dentists, and I even had to see a social worker and speech pathologist. But I thought, I'd like to be a doctor. But my math was not fabulous. So, one thing that helped me, because this whole cleft palate journey not only made me want to be a doctor, but it also created a lot of anxiety. And one thing that really helped me was reading books. And so I read and read and read. Nancy Drew, Trixie Belden. I even got into my mother's Harlequin romances, but that's when they were clean. Right. And so, and it wasn't until I was like 10 when I thought I wrote a story and my mother thought it was great. And of course, mothers think everything their kids do, most things, they love it or whatever. But she's like, you should be a writer. I'm like, yeah, yeah, whatever. But like I said before, my math was not fabulous. So they always said you need math to be a doctor. And so I started writing more. I wrote plays in elementary school that the school actually performed. And then took more writing classes in high school. And then in college, I actually have a bachelor's in psychology because I was told that writers don't make any money. So I thought, well, I should have a backup plan. So yeah, I probably went on too long there.
Oh no, that was wonderful. I love that the plays that you wrote in elementary school got performed by the school. Was there a teacher or somebody who saw this interest and talent in you and wanted to encourage it? How did that come about?
I really didn't have any teachers that in college I had one teacher who was very discouraging to me.
Oh.
He I don't want to really get into it, but after taking a class with him, I thought, I'm not a writer. This guy thinks I'm not a writer. But then I got into other classes. I wrote for the newspaper. I had other English teachers that were more supportive, but I really don't have one writing mentor like from school that I can think of that encouraged my writing.
Well, that's amazing that you were able to push past the discouragement from that one class and write several books to this
Mhm.
point. So that's amazing. You talked about your experience with the cleft palate and how that the experiences that you had with that through the medical, going to the doctor and all these things created a lot of anxiety in you. How did books help you to overcome that or to give you a place of comfort? What was that like?
Right. So I did a lot of, I just read because it was a great way to get away, right? To escape, to like reading the Nancy Drew mysteries or the Trixie Belden. They were just interesting and just took me out of myself, right? Out of my worrying about me. They were ways to learn about Nancy or Trixie, right? How they were going to solve these mysteries. So I always encourage people to read, and it's interesting when I go to author events and I'll go, "Oh, do you read?" And they're like, "No." And I'm like, "Oh, you just wounded my heart." And I say that there's always something you can read, you know. So, anyways, I guess that's the story. I was constantly in a book, always reading a book.
I loved those books too, Trixie Belden, Nancy Drew. I read so many of those. Those are really fun mysteries to
Mhm.
read. But that's interesting that, and
Right,
that's
right.
really great that you had books that you could turn to during that time that gave you an escape, I guess, and just took, like you said, took you outside of yourself. And I love that that happened. How has that experience? I'm sure it was really profound in your life, and it went on for a long time. So it was something that was really profound. How does that influence your writing now? Your character development, your plot development. How do all those experiences influence that?
So are you talking about like the cleft palate journey or just is
Yes.
that what you're referring to? Okay. So the
Yes.
truth be told is I not interested in visiting that part of my life ever again. When I was 15, every year I would go up to Madison because that's where I had my major surgery. And at 6, I was 6. I had another one before, but they fixed everything apparently when I was 6. Then every year after that, I would go to Madison and they'd shoot things up my nose, they do hearing tests, and it was always like they always had a recommendation. Oh, she needs this or that or this or that. So I was 15, and it was my last visit. They said you're good to go. You don't have to come back. When I was 15, I shut that door and locked it away. And then I fairly recently, within the last couple of years, I joined a Facebook page for cleft palate, families dealing with cleft palates. And I would read their post and these families the emotional toil on them and the worry, and I realized, as challenging as it was for me, I didn't have it as bad as they had. Many of them had it. I only had the cleft palate. I did not have the lip. I didn't have all the nose. I didn't have any of the craniofacial anomalies that can't come with that. um, and I thought, geez, Carol, you're kind of a crybaby. But then I, I, I always give, like, when people post, I always give them a hug, just, that emoji hug. And, some of them would say, oh, like my life is terrible and there's no, it's awful. And I'd say, well, I did have a cleft palate, but I'm an author now, so I'm happy that I'm alive and that I'm doing things. Well, then at this time, I had written Raleigh, but not the character was actually a boy, and he did not have any. He didn't have the cleft palate, nothing. But then I submitted it to Chicken Scratch Books, And she said, no, I'm going to have to pass, and then she gave me a whole bunch of reasons. I mean, who gives you reasons and feedback? I mean, that's very unheard of, but I was so grateful. So I said, if I made changes, would you reconsider or look at it? So then I thought, I think I need to make her have a bilateral cleft, which means she had the cleft lip and the palate. And I didn't want it to be all about that, but I wanted it to be a component of her. I didn't see any other books out there, and there probably are, with the protagonist with these issues or anomalies, as they call it. And then I resubmitted it, and Carrie accepted the book. So that was a long answer, wasn't it?
That was wonderful. I loved your answer because, as you know, the podcast is called Stories Create Moments, and the focus is on ways that teachers and parents can help their students and children connect with themselves, their peers, their communities, and the world. And I think that your book does that in so many ways. But one of the ways, and I loved hearing the backstory on how Raleigh came about. I really, really loved that. And the way that you felt like you wanted to support these families and also to help kids see themselves in a book. And what a wonderful way to help kids connect with the world and connect with others through this story. So I really appreciate you sharing that. And while we're
Well,
talking
thank
about
you.
Raleigh, why don't you tell us a little bit about this book? Yeah, I'm really, really
Yeah.
gave me chills. So
Raleigh is she's 10 years old. She's camping with her parents and she'd rather be at a water park. She's also a big scaredy cat, right? She's afraid of everything. And she sees a bunch of frogs. There's just too many frogs in this campground. And that came from a real situation. The thing that really gets her upset, though, is learning about the legend of Chicken McGee, who was a lumberjack or a lumberjack ghost, right? So she's ready to pack up and leave. Of course, her parents, you know, say no. And then her best friend, Huey, or her long name is Hildegard, but we call her Huey. She shows up, and Raleigh thinks, wow, this is great. My best friend is here. We're gonna, run away from the frogs. And of course there's a mysterious frog lady too, and Chicken McGee. And then Huey is not having any of it. Huey is not interested. There are no such thing as ghost, whatever. And she's kind of mean to Raleigh. They argue, and they kind of stop talking to each other, and Raleigh has to figure out this mystery if she wants to save her friendship. So that's kind of the tagline we put on it without giving too much away.
yeah, I loved this book. I read it once and I've been rereading it the past couple of days just to refresh my memory on it. And it's just such a delightful story. I love I love Huey and Raleigh, and in some ways they're kind of opposites, which I think adds some dynamic to the story and helps highlight what Raleigh is trying to learn throughout the story.
Right, exactly. Yes. Now I'm working on the second book. I don't know if Chicken Scratch will pick it up, but the working title is called Rest in Peat, and it's inspired by the are you familiar with bog bodies? How they kind of
No.
mummified, preserved bodies that fell in, yeah. So it's another little,
Oh, yes.
creepy adventure.
Sorry to
No, no,
sorry to
no.
interrupt, but
No,
yes,
that's fine. That's good.
I have heard about bog bodies.
Yeah, and it's going right now. It's not done, but I belong to a beta reading group or a critique group. And so I've just submitted another two more chapters, and I'm getting kind of mixed reviews. Raleigh is less likable in this book because she does something that's kind of mean, that goes against who she is. And that, the theme is really, even though she gets teased, she turns on someone in this book. And so she has to learn about that. So we'll see how it goes, and if Chicken Scratch will pick that book up.
Well, good luck with that. It sounds like a really fun story. I would love to read it. I heard about bog bodies recently. I didn't know that's what they were called, but while you were talking about Raleigh and the things she needs to learn in the book you're writing, can you take listeners through what, without giving anything away, what she needed to learn in the first book, in Raleigh Peters and the Lumberjack Ghost? You talked about how she's a scaredy cat. what was what was
Right.
what was her growth arc in that, and how did you develop that?
Right. So I that's not an easy process for me. So when I start a book, I usually ask the question, what does this character want? But what does this character need? So maybe that is a little bit of a character, like Carol wants to be rich and famous, but Carol needs to be grateful for all the things she has, right? Do you see how that works? So Huey
Yes.
is she's terrified of everything, and she feels like she can't do things, right? Like she is insecure in her abilities. And so her arc is because she's not going to stop being afraid, because I need to keep her afraid for the next books and the next book, right? But she has to learn that she is capable. She is capable of doing more than she thinks. So, and that was, I think, a little bit of, for me, it was a personal journey, if we want to use that term, but um, having a cleft palate, I think, and my mother was always afraid I'd, rip out the surgery, or whatever. So I was always made to be afraid to climb the extra, the rocks, or to do, swinging on a rope in a barn, or stuff like that. Because in the back of my mind, I'm thinking, I can't do this. And I think, Raleigh had to learn that. And then I think the other thing is both Raleigh and Huey had to learn to listen to each other, right? To try to understand that they both come at things a little differently, right? But it doesn't have to make them enemies.
Which I think all of those things are good conversations to have with children and students at the middle grade level, because all of them are learning something. And some kids need to learn
Right.
that they're capable. Some kids need to learn to be nicer. Some kids, and all of them are learning communication. And so I think your book provides a great springboard for those types of conversations to take place in a classroom or with a parent and a child. Do you have anything to add to that?
Well, no. Well, the only thing I want to add is my mother, who passed away when she was 92, 2 years ago, said, you are
Wow.
always learning, right? She goes, you're always learning. You should always be learning every day. And that was something she took to heart. I mean, she did. She tried to learn something every day. So when you said, like middle school kids, I'm like, yep, they need to learn, but so do old people like me.
That's true. And listening, and you mentioned this in an email, we mentioned this when we were chatting over email, but listening is such an important skill for everyone to have, and something that I think can make communities and societies stronger. So I appreciate that aspect of it. Now, Raleigh Peters and the Lumberjack Ghost is a ghost story. I mean, it it's a kind of a scary story. It's perfect, I think, for October if we're wanting to look at Halloween and things like that, books to read during the month of October. I think it's a great book to read anytime. but I think it's great to read during October. And I want to kind of tag on to something you said before, which is Raleigh had to face her fears. And this story provided a great opportunity for her to do that. What kinds of conversations can teachers and parents have with their kids who are fearful? And how can this book sort of springboard those discussions?
Wow, that's a deep question here. Well,
Sorry, I
in
kind of
the
threw that one at
story,
you.
right, she is afraid. I guess I think for kids, if they're trying to think ahead, right? Like sometimes we're put into situations that we have not planned. Like Raleigh is put into this situation that she has not planned for, right? Maybe though, trying to help kids to make like maybe they can't plan ahead, but to on a conscious level try to do something that's scary to them, that's a small scary, right? So they might be afraid of speaking in class, they might be afraid of raising their hand, right? They might be afraid of talking to a kid at the school, right? Or at the lunchroom, and maybe trying to help them problem solve or to think about ways that they can overcome this. Some of the, anxiety comes from our imagined outcome, right? We think, oh, if I talk to that person or raise my hand, I think I am going to look ridiculous, especially if I have the wrong answer. And the truth be told, and this is an anxiety thing, sometimes you might look ridiculous, right? The kids might laugh. You might have the wrong answer, but helping them to understand that it's not the end of the world, right? You try, and maybe the next time you're going to have the right answer. So I think it's just trying to help people to overcome that, and to realize, yeah, you might have the wrong answer, or people might laugh, but you can still do this, and you just kind of work through it. Does that make sense?
That makes perfect sense. I love that. I love what you shared. And I think earlier you mentioned Raleigh needed to feel like she was capable. And the things that you're suggesting children can do, every little step they take can help them feel more capable. And they just grow in confidence from those things, which I love.
Right,
So
right.
that was perfect. Thank you for sharing that.
Yeah.
Is there anything that you want to add? Any other discussions you'd like to have?
I mean, you asked a lot of really great questions yesterday. That was quite thought provoking. I guess if there are any people wanting to write, to write books or write whatever, I just like to encourage them because sometimes you're not going to have people in your life who will encourage you. Sometimes they're going to be very negative. But if that's something you are committed to or interested in, then you need to do it. And you can take small steps. You don't have to write the great American novel as your first writing piece, right? You do have to take that step, and you have to stay with it. Even if you're, writing 5 minutes a day, or 5 minutes a week, whatever. But then you build on that. You gradually build on that. And writing, it can be negative. I get rejections all the time, but I get a chance to be on a podcast too. This is pretty exciting. So to try to just not dwell on the negative and try to just be positive and try to encourage other writers and other people too. Was that too long?
That was wonderful. That's wonderful advice. I think as you were sharing that, I've thought back to some things in my life, too, in my life where I've needed to take those small steps. And then those small steps give you confidence and lead to bigger steps. And so those are good conversations for parents and teachers to have with children too, especially or adults who are interested in writing. And so I appreciate you sharing that. Well, Carol, it has been really, really delightful to talk to you and have you on this podcast. I can't wait to share this in October for everyone to hear. Where can people find you online?
Yeah, sure. My website is clpowerauthor.com, and I will spell that. Of course, CL Power is Paur, and then author, AUTH, I hope it's OR, right? .com. That's my
Yes.
website. I'm also, you can Google me and find me on Facebook, Instagram, LinkedIn, Twitter. I'm not very savvy on social media, but I'm there. I just post slow, like once a week, maybe twice a week. And then I love to share recipes on my website, and I'll probably start doing more again in the fall. Just one or two here and there. Nothing fancy. I'm not Paula Dean or I'm not the Food Network either. But
That sounds wonderful. I love to get new recipes, so I'll definitely be looking for those. And I started following you on Instagram, so I love to see that. But I have really, really enjoyed talking to you. You're a delightful person. Your story is delightful. I hope everyone gets a chance to hear it, to read it. Raleigh Peters and the Lumberjack Ghost. It's got some spookiness in it, but not too scary. And it's just really, really a delightful story. So, really uplifting. So, look for Carol Paur at those places. And thank you for joining me, Carol.